Benvenuti, welcome to this beginner lesson. We are going to talk about Italian verbs from a beginner's point of view, and we'll try and understand how they work and make it easy for you so you don't have to think too much about verbs. They should be second nature, and I know they're not because they are difficult. So, my name is Manu Venditti. I'm from Italy Made Easy. If you want to take part in these live lessons, I strongly suggest that you go to, first of all, you have to subscribe to the YouTube channel and activate notifications. But if that confuses you, go to italymadeeasy.com/live and you will find a calendar of events so you know when they're happening, and also explanations on how to participate and how to get notifications, okay? So, oh, wrong one. Italian verbs. They're difficult, especially for English speakers, because in most cases, English verbs are quite easy. Not tenses. Tenses are not actually easy, but how a single tense works is fairly easy because it's pretty much the same all the way through. It doesn't matter who's doing the action in English. It's pretty much the same, except for he and she if you speak proper English. In Italian, it's not like that. But the truth is, like I said yesterday with gender, you're lucky that English doesn't have gender, but most languages have at least two genders, at least, if not 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. So, same happens to verbs. English doesn't really have verb conjugation that much. I mean, it has it obviously, but you don't see it. And Italian verbs show you. So basically, what scares you of Italian verbs is that first, you have to learn all the tenses, but that would be the same problem if you were learning English, or if you're relearning English. You'd have to learn the difference between I was and I have been and I should have been, That's not what we're doing today. Today we're talking about the basics of how does an Italian verb work and how can you get it right. So, quickly, Savan, che lavoro fai in Australia? What job do I do in Australia? Well, I do this, obviously. But I'm an academic, so I teach Italian at a university. All right. So, why are Italian verbs difficult? That's because depending on the subject of the verb, the person doing the action or the thing doing the action, the verb changes. Now in English, you can see this in the verb to be. So if you haven't thought about it before, think about the English verb to be. First of all, it's to be. But then you don't say, I be Italian, you be Italian in the present tense. You don't say that. You say, I am Italian. But then when you're talking to you, the person in front of you, you say, you are Italian. And when you're talking about he or she, you'll say, he is Italian. So the verb to be has conjugation. In the singular, the 3 singular subjects like me, you, and he and she, or it, you can see the conjugation in the verb to be. Keep that in mind because that's what every Italian verb does in every subject and in every tense. But if you get this idea right, you can move forward, okay? So do you get this idea right? So are you okay comparing Italian verbs, any tense, any subject, to the verb to be in the present tense? Scrivete sì, just write sì. So I can move forward. Also, when you're writing C, I know you can't do it with your keyboard, but I'll show you how C is spelled correctly in Italian, because most people don't spell it right, even Italians. It's spelled C with an accent. So I know your keyboard doesn't have the accent, but in real life, you should be saying C with an accent. Randy, the apostrophe works if your keyboard doesn't have Italian accent, that's fine. See? Okay, perfetto. So we're all on the same page that we're thinking about the verb to be in the present tense to move forward. So, what's a typical Italian verb? So today, we're not talking about irregular verbs. What's an irregular verb? Well, an irregular verb in English would be to be, I am, you are. So that's strange in English. Well, in Italian, we have a lot of irregular verbs that are different in the present tense. We're working with the basic. So we're going to look at regular verbs. So, for example, a simple verb like cantare. Now, cantare means to sing. But be careful because as a beginner, you might be tempted to just use cantare and have anybody who's singing say that verb. So io cantare, io means I, tu cantare, that's not right, and it's like Tarzan speaking, like you're speaking like Tarzan, which is fine as a complete beginner, but you want to move forward, right? So, no Tarzan. We want to learn how to conjugate verbs, and it's actually a lot easier than you think. So many of you already know how the present tense works, you know what endings we're attaching, but in today's lesson I want to help you come cross that bridge that makes it like so foreign and so I gotta think too much about it. You don't want to think too much about it. Actually, I just realized that I might not be in the frame because I'm not looking at myself. Okay, so io non canto, yeah. Laura, I don't sing either. Io non canto assolutamente. I'm terrible. Allora, cantare, this means to sing. Like in English, we don't say I to sing, but we say I sing, and we don't say she to sing, we say she sings. We can't use cantare as a verb. Cantare is only the idea of singing. So you would use it in Italian just like you do in English when you say I like to sing. That to sing is the infinitive. If you want to know the grammatical term, it's called infinitive. It's the same in English. So when you say I like to sing, which verb are you really conjugating? In English it's hard to tell, but you are conjugating to like, because then you say she likes to sing. You see that like changed, but to sing didn't change. So if you were to change it to a different tense, it'd be the same. She has always liked to sing. So the verb that changes is the first one. In Italian it's going to be the same. But in the present tense, which is what we're focusing on today, we do not use cantare to talk about singing. So a standard Italian verb will do this. You will take the infinitive and chop the ending are. You're left with what is called the root or the stem of the verb, which is really the concept of singing. Think about in English. Now, I can say sleeping, I can say slept, and I can say sleeps. So there's three variations of the same verb, but it's S-L-E-P, S-L-E-E-P. Well, it's that it doesn't work in English, but that gives you the idea of sleeping, and then it doesn't matter which way you're using it, you still understand that it's about sleeping. This is going to be important later on in the lesson to help you understand any Italian tense. Okay, so cantare is the idea of singing. We get rid of are, and then we attach endings. Now, endings match a subject. So in English, this would be the only ending that you have in the present tense is s. So you attach s when the subject is he, she, or it. So you're going to say sleeps or sings. Okay, that's the only ending that you would have in English, but in Italian we have an ending for each subject. This is complicated, but actually makes it easy and neat, because the ending for I is O all the time. So I know that you know this probably, but so many times I hear students of Italian for months who still cannot conjugate a verb in io. If you are the subject, your verb has to end with O. It doesn't matter if it's regular or irregular, it's going to end with O. Try. Canto. I sing. If I gave you the verb, let's say, parlare. Now, of course, you can't say io parlare, because like I said, that's like Tarzan speaking, like me speak. This has to change to parlo. The beauty of Italian, though, unlike English or many other languages, is that because the O ending only works for I don't even need to say io. And that's why you will find that Italians don't say the subject in most cases. So to say I speak, all we need to say is parlo. Parlo italiano e spagnolo. That's it. You don't need to say io parlo. So that's the first thing. If you want to hide the fact that you're a complete beginner, don't say the subject and people will perceive you as even better than you are, which is pretty cool. Parlo. So io parlo means I speak. And it always means I speak. That's why we don't need to say io, there's no confusion there. Now, when the subject is tu, if you know this, wait till later because I'm going to teach you the new stuff. The ending for you, meaning the person that I'm talking to who's a friend or family, the ending is always I. So tu parli. Tu parli means you speak, or simply parli italiano, parli francese, parli giapponese, you speak. Bravissimi. Yeah. Perfetto. Benissimo ragazzi. Quindi tu parli, you speak. How do we... Okay, now, in Italian, like in English, we have 6 possible subjects. As in, me, you, he, she, or it, us, which means you and me together, you guys, which is only you guys without me, and then they, other people from us. So Italian has the same 6 possibilities, so that's the same. Other languages have more or less, so Italian is the same. How do you remember this? Well, first of all, think about the fact that you're going to talk about yourself a lot. Not because you're self-centered, but that's because people will ask you questions about yourself, and then you will say, I do this, I do that. Okay, so keeping that in mind, you want to get really good with speaking in the io form. And if you have a hard time remembering that your verb has to end with o, I give you a little visual. I give my students at the university a little visual, which is imagine yourself like somebody who has somebody who can't swim and has like one of those floating donuts around. Okay, see yourself like that, or see yourself as very, very large. Okay, so whenever you speak about yourself, you want to see yourself with this donut going for a swim. So it's io parlo, canto, you got this o around you. Whenever you're speaking to a person in front of you, imagine them as a stick figure. They're a big stick with a dot at the top. So that's the e ending for you, reminding you that when you speak to the person in front of you, you have to say parli, canti, mangi, and so on. Yes, this is only for the present tense, but the idea applies to all tenses. The endings are going to be different, but the idea is the same. So I'm trying to get you to understand how it works at the basic level, but then we move on, okay? So tu parli, you speak. Whenever the subject is he or she, now he, the word is, oh, what's happening? The word for he is lui. And the word for she is lei. In Italian, we don't have a word for it. 2 things, guys. I've heard some people still teach you that we have the words egli for he and ella for she. Please do not use them. It's like saying thou. So like, thou shall eat. We don't speak like that. So please do not say egli and ella. It's only used in old literary books and sometimes in contemporary prose. You know, somebody's trying to be literary or poetic, but we don't speak them. So do not use egli and ella. So what happens, because we don't have, I said that we don't have the word for it. So how do I say it is water? How do I say it is water? Remember what I said, that the verb already tells you what the subject is? And also we have context. È acqua. I'll just say is water. That's why whenever you hear Italians speaking in English, sometimes they don't use subjects because we don't need them in Italian. So if I say that the dog speaks, okay, or the dog sings, I would just say canta. Or I would say il cane canta, the dog sings. So we don't need the word for it. I know you want to say it. Lu, egli, ella, for famous people? No. For nobody. For nobody. Egli e ella is if you live back in the 50s or in 2 centuries ago. So don't use it. The ending for he and she is a. So every time a verb is an are verb, like cantare, parlare, mangiare, comprare, any verb that ends with are, that is regular, will use these endings. Now, I know it sounds complicated, but make it easy. Most verbs in Italian are are verbs. I would say 80% of verbs are are, which means that what I'm teaching you today applies to 80% of the verbs that you might want to use. So don't worry too much if sometimes you get it wrong. If you are a beginner, then it's fine. Make mistakes by conjugating all verbs as are if you haven't learned the other ones, which I'm not going to teach you today. Randy, yeah, it's used in the Bible, but that's precisely my point. As much as it's a modern translation, they're still trying to render biblical language, and so they're going to use egli and ella. It's used in most book literature, but we don't speak it. And I'm guessing that you're not an author writing in Italian, so you shall be speaking in Italian and not writing. And if you're writing, you're probably writing notes for your friends and letters, so please say lui and lei. I don't know why people are still teaching this stuff. I don't know. Anyway, so every time he or she does something, your ending has to be a. So you guys, now try this. I'm going to give you the verb pensare. What do you think this verb means? If you already know what it means, don't say it. But if you don't know if you haven't seen this verb before, what do you think it means? Because we can cover a little bit on how to guess what a verb means. There's 138 people. Ciao a tutti. Oh, Jerry, while I'm waiting for the responses, Jerry, thank you for that, but go and see the previous live streams. They were horrible. I had all sorts of technical problems, so thank you for saying that my video and audio sound good or look good, but I've had 3 weeks of bad luck. So it's good to hear. Okay. Rashid, isn't lei also used for older people? Lei is used for formality. Anytime you speak to a stranger, you are going to say lei. So you're going to talk to that person as if you were saying she is. She sings, she speaks, but you're actually talking to that person. It's like, imagine you're speaking to the queen, Her Highness. How is your highness? Or whatever, It's kind of like that weird stuff. Okay, so pensare means to think. How would you be able to guess if you didn't know that it meant to think? Well, in English you have the adjective to be pensive. When you're pensive, you're thoughtful. You're immersed in your thoughts. So for not every, but for a lot of Italian words, there is an English equivalent. It's just that it's a higher register in English. It's not a word that we would use every day. Think about the simple word for tooth. It's dente. In English, it's tooth. But then you have dentist, denture, dental. So that's how you kind of guess what things mean in Italian. You use your high-level English. Now, I'm sorry, guys, if English is not your native language. My channel is making Italian easy for English speakers. But if you're watching this, I guess your English is pretty good. Okay, so pensare means to think. So how would you say I think? Sorry, it's really hot here, even with the air conditioning. I think. Penso. You think. What's you think? And then what's he thinks or she thinks? Perfetto? Benissimo. So what we've done is we've taken pensare, we've gotten rid of are, and then we attached the o to say I think. Then we attach the e to say you think, and then we attach the a to say he thinks or she thinks. Lui pensa, lei pensa. Perfetto. Okay, now let's go back to the basic idea of how to conjugate a verb. I'm gonna go through the endings for plural and explain what they are. Now, like I was saying earlier, the word lei is also used to mean you when I'm speaking to strangers, which is in many cases the norm for you speaking to Italians. Now, it's not only strangers, but it's people who are older than you, or just older people in general, or any adult that you're not friends with at any time. So lei pensa or lei parla means she speaks, but it can also mean you speak, depending on the context. But you conjugate the verb as if you're using she, so it's not a big problem. Now, noi is the word for we. I have to use it when I'm talking about you guys and me together, and the ending is iamo. So how would you say we sing? Or we are singing. Here's the thing that I haven't mentioned. There's so much to mention, sorry. But the Italian present tense is actually a lot cooler than the English present tense. So sometimes as a beginner you feel frustrated that you can only speak in the present tense. And you think, I want to say more. The present tense covers three things in Italian. It means the generic statement like, I am Italian, I speak Spanish. It renders the idea of continuity. So I'm speaking right now, I'm speaking Italian, I'm cooking, I'm eating. It's the continuous form. And it also covers the future tense. So if I say domani parlo spagnolo, that means tomorrow I will speak Spanish. It's the same verb, we wouldn't have to worry about it. Cantiamo is we sing, okay. Now, this one is something that can trick you as well, because in English, you don't really see the difference between you and you unless you break English and you say y'all or you guys or yous, depending on what bad version of English you're using. So, but this one is you when I'm talking to more than one person. And it's cantate, pensate, parlate, you guys sing, think, and eat. Speak, I think. Okay, perfetto. And then we have loro, which means they. Male or female or dogs, it doesn't matter. Now, we're going to use loro only if the subject is really human or animate. Human, actually. So in most cases, we're not gonna say it. If I'm talking about the biscuits, they are good, I'm just gonna say the biscuits are good. I'm not gonna say loro because loro is for people. That's something that maybe nobody ever told you. The ending for loro, for are verbs, is ano. Couple of things. I bet that 70%, 80%, if you're an English speaker, 90% of you are mispronouncing these verbs in the loro subject. Why is that? Because if I want to say they sing, like you guys are saying, that's the verb, isn't it? But something that most English speakers will do naturally is to say cantano, parlano, pensano. They're all incorrect because the accent the stress in these verbs is never on the ano part. It has to be somewhere before. It's not easy to predict. In this case, if it's not on the ano part, it has to be on the ca, so cantano. Cantano, they are singing. Parlano, they are speaking. Pensano, they are thinking. Okay? So, but that's something that is tricky a lot of the times. Yeah, Carlos, sí. Loro means parrot in Spanish, yes. Benissimo. Okay, so how do we bring it all together so that it's actually easy for you? I'm going to give you two exercises, okay? Oops. Trying to be smart. I'm going to give you two exercises for you to get good at conjugating verbs. First of all, you have to know the 6 endings. They're not hard, there's only 6 for the present tense. Don't worry about the other tenses. For now, focus on present tense because you can speak about your descriptions, what you're doing right now, and what you will do in the future. So that covers a lot. It just doesn't cover what happened in the past, really. So, un po' d'acqua, a little bit of water. Ok, so, any questions? No? Brevissimo ragazzi, benissimo. Allora, what are my 2 tips for you to make this automated? Of course you have to know the endings, but many of you already know the endings and still can't use them, or you have to think too much about it. So, let's focus on this. Like I said, you're going to talk about yourself a lot, and then you're going to talk to one person a lot. Now you have to choose, what are you most likely to do? Are you going to talk to only friends and family, or are you going to talk to strangers? If you know that you're going to talk to mostly strangers, get used to the O ending for me and the I ending for the person you're talking to. Then, another thing that you are going to use a lot is the us if you're traveling with somebody. So get used to the llamo ending because you're going to say that a lot. So prepare in advance to the things that you know are going to be useful for you. So, O for me, so parlo, canto, studio. This is really useful because if I gave you a new verb that you didn't know, let's say we're interacting and you realize that I'm gonna give you a difficult, like a pretty difficult verb, okay? And see how you can use it. I'm going to use the verb ponderare, to ponder. It's a very big word. You might not even use it in English, but ponderare has the same spelling as English, but it just ends with are because it's an Italian verb. So how would you say, I'm pondering? Andrew, I'll get to your question in a second. How would you say, I'm pondering? So it's a verb that you probably didn't know, you never thought about using. And I ponder is pondero. You have to take ponderare, you get rid of are, you're left with ponder, and then you attach the pondero. So how about, are you pondering? Ask me, Manu, are you pondering? I know it's a bit strange, but it's too easy to just say I speak and you sing, because that's what every teacher will work with. Not ponderando. Jerry, it's pondero. Ponderi, ponderi, you pondering? You pondering? Esatto. Ponderi? Esatto. How about, let's say like Suzanne, ciao. Let's say that Suzanne is pondering. How would you say Suzanne is pondering? Why are you using the star construction? Present tense, guys, present tense. Suzanne is pondering. Pondera, Suzanne pondera. Mia madre pondera. Perfetto, benissimo. So the idea is that once you know the endings, you should be able to conjugate any verb that you hear when you're speaking to Italians or when you're listening to watching a video or something. So pick a verb and start using it that way. But how do you make it so that it's not automated? Like I said, you're gonna use speak in the io form a lot. So take a verb and let's say, okay, you guys give me a verb. Give me an are verb that it's regular, and I'll show you what I would do if I were to learn Italian verbs again. I mean, I never had to learn them because it's my native language, but I still learn them. Okay. Mangiare, or you'll want me to use mangiare. Perfetto. Oh, amare. Can I use amare? It's nicer. Amare. 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 Okay. So, what I want you to do is, the old way of learning a language was to kind of parrot a whole conjugation. So the old days when I learned French, for example, we would do, I'll do it in Italian. Let's say amare, then we would say io amo, tu ami, lei amano, amiamo, voi amate, loro amano. And we would do it for hours. The thing is that it's totally out of context and it doesn't help my brain connect what each word means. That's why it takes you a long time. If you study this way, that's why your brain takes too long to give you the right verb. So put these things in context. So let's take amare, and don't just say amo, or don't just say io amo. Make it into a sentence and feel it. So say something that is true to you, or if it's an action verb, do it while you're saying it. So, io amo, I don't know, io amo mia nipote. I love my niece. Io amo mia nipote. Io amo mio figlio. I love my son. Okay, so make it into a sentence because it's going to be meaningful. What I would do then, take a whole list of verbs. Make sure that they're regular verbs and are, because you're starting out. And then take another verb, imparare, okay, I just saw it, to learn. Then just say, io imparo l'italiano. Io imparo l'italiano. I'm learning the Italian language, because you are. So start saying things that you actually do. Amo il formaggio, amo I miei figli, amo mia sorella. Sì? Perfetto. Yes, Skypare. Skypare is a word, to Skype. See, we make it up. Skypare. But careful with your pronunciation. I'm not going to say in this video because it's for everybody, but if you mispronounce the io version of Skypare, as in Skypo, you might be saying something very vulgar, so careful. Amo il mio fidanzato, amo il mio cane. Perfetto. Okay, so say things that are relevant. And do this with a bunch of verbs. Then go to the tu. Don't just say tu parli, tu canti, tu cucini, tu ami. Take somebody, doesn't matter if they don't speak Italian. Put them in front of you. Take a dog, pet, and just talk to them and ask them questions, because the beauty of Italian is that nothing changes when we're asking a question, just the intonation. So, fumi? Do you smoke? Fumi? Parli? Parli italiano? Parli inglese? To your dog. Mangi il formaggio? Do you eat cheese? So, speak to the person in front of you while you're practicing. Okay, then maybe get a magazine, take a picture of a celebrity, and talk to them formally, because you would in Italian, and then would say, lei parla italiano? Lei mangia la pizza? Okay, make it in context. And then do the same for noi. So you take a couple of friends, or a couple of study buddies, or a couple of pets, or you draw them, and then, or you draw your family, and then you say, noi cantiamo una canzone, we sing, or whatever. But make sure that it makes sense to you when you're actually doing it. Don't just, rote your way through a list of verbs, because it doesn't really stick in your brain. Okay? So put the verb into a phrase even if, yeah, esatto, Andrew. You start making phrases even if the grammar is not correct, as in, you might not know how to use the right article for, like, before I said, io amo il formaggio. It doesn't matter if you said io amo formaggio, because you forgot to say the. Yes, it's okay to make mistakes while you're learning verbs, because your focus is to get the verbs natural. Okay? So, yeah, it doesn't matter if the rest of your grammar is not correct. Io non parlo l'italiano molto bene. Complimenti, Salva. Noi mangiamo la pizza. Sì. Parlo poco italiano. Sì. Esatto. So, make sentences that are true with verbs that you understand. And then make them get involved in things. Before I saw a question that I said I was going to get to, and I think it was really a good question. Let's see if I can find it. Can't find it. Can't find it. Anyway, okay, so this is the idea of how to get good with verbs. Do not use the old repetition method. Is the best way for you to do is first get used to using the endings that you're going to use the most, like io, tu, or io and lei. Then say a bunch of verbs, get a list of verbs that are regular and conjugate them on the spot, but don't just conjugate them like it's, mathematics. Conjugate them in sentences. That's the best way for your brain to understand that when I say amiamo, if I just say amiamo, your brain is not going to remember that you should say amiamo whenever it's us speaking. But if you're hugging your partner and you say, noi amiamo l'Italia, we love Italy, and you know that it's true, but you're actually saying we love Italy and you know what you mean, it's going to really make your brain remember. And I just remembered the question, I think it was Andrew. Somebody was confused about when to use tu and when to use voi. It's actually quite common, but the solution is quite simple. I'm going to say tu if I'm speaking to one person or dog or child that I'm friends with or family. And I'm going to say voi if I'm speaking to more than one person, whether they are the kings and the queens or whether they're friends. I'm going to say voi. So I'm going to say you guys or y'all. So that's the difference. One person, you're going to say tu if you're friends with them, and more than one person, you're going to say voi. That's it. Yeah, it was Andrew. Perfetto. Benissimo ragazzi. I hope this gave you a little bit of help with getting more natural with using Italian verbs, because once you get it right for the present tense, whenever you learn new tenses, well, you're going to have to learn when to use the tense, but many of them are the same as English. And then you are going to have to learn the endings for the new verb, but you get the concept already. So let's say, for example, actually, let's stop it here. PJ, great question. Actually, I'm going to answer this. Is there a formal plural form? Yes and no. Actually, Italians still struggle. Standard Italian doesn't have it. Regional Italian has it. So in Naples, if I'm talking to, hold on. Oh, I actually forgot which dialect. But some dialects will have formal ways of speaking plural. In Italian, we don't have it because when you think about singular and plural, singular is I, io, and plural is noi, we. Tu is singular and voi is the plural equivalent, as in I'm speaking to one person, I'm speaking to many people. And then lei, lui means he and she, and the plural is loro. So in theory, if I address you as lei because I'm formal to you, in theory I should say loro if I'm talking to two of you. But this is old-fashioned and it's not really used in current Italian. So if I'm talking to one celebrity, I will address that person as lei. Doesn't have to be a celebrity, it could be my doctor, it could be the local deli person. If it's one person that I don't know and we're adults, I'm going to say lei. But if I say lei to one person and then I say lei to the other person and I see them together, what am I going to say? I'm going to say voi, which breaks formality in a certain way because voi means you guys. So one way Italians do it is by avoiding it. I know it's weird, but we had that problem at the university because we have to be formal to our lecturers, but when we catch two together, it's really strange to say voi. It's like you guys to two professors. So we tend to speak to them individually, or we just avoid the concept of talking to two of them. That's it. People are coming to work, so I'm getting distracted. No, it's not hard, Salva. Come on, come back. Also, this is not a very beginner question, it's an advanced question. Shouldn't have answered, now I scared you. No. So, Italians will avoid speaking to two people formally because if we say voi, we perceive it as being rude. They don't, because that's the only way to do it. Or you can still use voi but use the titles. You know? Oh, Signora Maria e Signora Giovanna, mangiate la pizza? So I've said you guys eat pizza, but I've also said Mrs. Maria and Mrs. Giovanna. So we can use titles to still use the voi, which sounds casual, but we're still being polite. But nobody's going to think that you are rude if you say voi to a bunch of people, even if they deserve formality. Ok ragazzi, vi ringrazio. Great pleasure to be here. Keep your questions coming. I will look at them and maybe create a live stream about this. And now I'm gonna get very busy. I'm launching a new program for beginners starting February 13th. It's From Zero to Italian. So you can go to fromzerotoitalian.com and pre-register. But basically it's a lot of work. It's killing me. That's why I'm not sleeping. But I will probably have a few still daily live streams, but I will not have lessons like this ones where I'm actually teaching a lot, because to make this 45 minutes, it's going to take me a couple of hours before and after. So I will do more of the interactive kind of stuff. So I'll just get on camera, probably from my phone, I can do it from home, and just interact to you in Italian at all levels. So there's going to be one for beginner, one for intermediate, and one for advanced students. But for the next 2 weeks, don't expect a lot of these full-on training. There are 2 planned already. If you go to italymadeeasy.com/live, you will find that there's one on, I forgot already, like speaking in sentences. And yeah, have a look at the calendar. There are a couple of structured lessons, but there will be fewer and fewer, and there will be more of spontaneous and quicker live streams for the next 2 weeks. Vabbè ragazzi, un bacione, grazie mille e ci vediamo domani. Buonanotte e buona giornata.